Welcome to Beyond 3D, a space where we explore new perspectives about consciousness, emotions, neuroscience, energy, healing, and the new paradigms transforming the way we live, work, heal, and create our reality. I am Flavia Sierra, creator of Quantum Neurointegration Mindfulness, and your guide on this journey beyond all ways of thinking and into a more conscious, connected, and empowered way of living. Because the world is changing, and many times the answer we are searching for cannot be found from the same level of awareness where the problem was created. So together, let's explore what exists beyond fear, beyond limitation, and beyond the old 3D paradigms. This is Beyond 3D. In the previous episode, we talked about how our emotions can show us the level of consciousness from which we are experiencing life. We talked about emotions not being enemies, but signals. And we also talked about something very important. Many times, we are not reacting only to what is happening in the present moment. We are reacting to everything we have been carrying inside. And today, we are going to go deeper into that. Today, we are talking about my famous autopilot. Because even though many people believe they make conscious decisions, most of the time the reality is that very often we react from internal programs, accumulated stress, unresolved emotions, and survival mechanisms that activate automatically. And this happens absolutely to everyone. Sometimes we think we react a certain way because that's just who we are. But many times, or most of the times I would say, it is not our true self reacting. It is our nervous system trying to survive. And understanding this completely changes the way we see ourselves and the way we see others. Because we stop asking only, why did I react like that? Actually, if we think about it, because in 3D we don't even think about it, we just react and we think that's who we are. So when we stop asking, why did I react like that? We start asking or begin to ask, where was the reaction coming from? And that question changes everything. Because when we begin observing where our reactions come from, we start recovering our ability to choose differently. And this brings us to something very important about the mind. Probably you all know that we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. The conscious mind is the logical and rational part. It analyzes, decides, and thinks in the present moment. But the subconscious mind is far more powerful than most people realize. It stores emotional memories, beliefs, associations, experiences, past decisions, and events we may not even remember anymore. And all of that becomes automatic programming that develops throughout our lives. Many of those programs begin during childhood. Because when we are children, our brains learn by observing, feeling, and constantly creating associations. For example, if a child grows up feeling rejected, they may unconsciously develop the belief that they need approval in order to feel valuable. If they grow up in an environment filled with criticism or stress, they may learn to live in a constant state of alert. If they experience emotional or financial insecurity, they may develop a deep fear of losing control. And what is remarkable is that many of these programs continue running automatically in adulthood, even when the original situation no longer exists. That is what I call the autopilot. We don't even have to think about it anymore. It's an automatic reaction. Sometimes we react before we think, because it is not the conscious mind responding first. Most of the time, the subconscious program responds first. The autopilot. In many ways, we are like computers. Someone presses the play button and the program begins to run. And that helps explain why a small experience can trigger such big emotions. It also explains why people react so differently to the same situation. Even in a same family, even if they are brothers, sisters, siblings that were educated exactly the same. And that happens because the present moment touches emotional memories that were already stored inside us. And it's not just the experience that we live, but how we perceive it or how we felt it or what we thought about it when that happened. And every child is different. So maybe now this starts making even more sense to you. Because many times we think we are reacting only to what is happening today. But in reality, many of our reactions come from emotional experiences our system has been storing for years. And not only emotional experiences, mental programs as well. Programs created through repetition until they become our personal truth. Illness is a program. Religious beliefs are programs. Food habits are programs. Everything is a program. Someone who grew up in an environment where mistakes were criticized or punished may become an adult who constantly fears making mistakes. When I personally understood this, it made me feel more compassionate, personally speaking, about my mother. Because I know, as I knew my grandmother and my great-grandmother, how the environment was absolutely of no mistakes, and they were continuously criticized. I don't know if punished. But until today, that she's almost 80 years old, she constantly is fear of making mistakes. She says she doesn't, but actually when she makes them, she doesn't accept she made them. And it's so hard for me. And sometimes I was so hard on her. So that's what I told you before. This changes everything, the way we see ourselves. And it also changes when we are conscious enough what we feel or think about our loved ones. The nervous system stores emotional memories like a hard drive. And later it reacts automatically whenever something similar appears. Even if it's not in the same context, it's just the fact, the situation, the memory. Literally, it's a button. Then a situation happens in the present moment, and without realizing it, it presses that button, the want button, the fear button, the rejection button, the insecurity button. And suddenly we are reacting not only to the current moment, but also to everything our body learned to associate with danger, abandonment, pressure, humiliation, insecurity, or loss of control. And this is where a new level of consciousness begins to emerge. A higher level of awareness understands that many times the problem is not the current situation. The problem is the subconscious program the situation activates within us. And when we are capable to see that, we stop identifying completely with our automatic reactions. We begin to understand that's not who we are. That's the automatic pilot. We realize that we have the ability and the power to choose how we respond, who we want to be, and how we want to feel. Instead of saying, this is just who I am, that many people still has just that answer, that's who I am, we begin asking, when did I learn to react this way? And these are questions that you can do yourself. If you are one of those people that just say, that's who I am, let me tell you something, that's not who you are. That's who you learned to be. But you can be whoever you want to be. So you can start thinking or making these questions. When did I learn to react this way? What part of me feels threatened? What emotional memory is being activated right now? And those questions open an entirely different level of awareness and transformation. And why is this so good for people? Because that gives us freedom, peace, tranquility. You know, many people live almost completely on autopilot without realizing it. They wake up tired. They rush through the day. They react automatically to messages, problems, traffic, news, deadlines, arguments, and worries. And little by little, the body begins to live as if everything were a threat. The problem is that when the nervous system stays in survival mode for too long, we start normalizing states that are actually exhaustion. We begin to normalize tension. We normalize irritability. We normalize anxiety. We normalize disconnection. We normalize emotional fatigue. And that's talking about emotions. But then through time, when physical problems begin to appear, we normalize headaches. We normalize high blood pressure. We normalize body pain, and then diseases, and then autoimmune diseases, and many other things. And many people no longer remember what true calms feel like. They simply don't. Imagine a mother who has been emotionally exhausted for weeks. I don't want to talk about months or years, just weeks. She has responsibilities, work, financial concerns, accumulated fatigue, and feels like she has to handle everything herself. Then one day, her child accidentally spills a glass of water, and she explodes, much more than the situation deserves. Then comes the guilt, and she asks herself, why did I react like that over something so small? And that happens if she notices, because many times she doesn't even notice that until it's too late, or until it has happened many times. But she wasn't reacting only to the glass of water. She was reacting to accumulated exhaustion. She's not patient anymore. She's not tolerant anymore. She has been reacting to constant pressure, to emotional overload, to days and weeks spent living on high alert. That is autopilot. Until when consciousness, we start to be aware of our ways of reacting. And I want to clarify something important. Understanding our reactions doesn't mean justifying them. It means understanding them so we can transform them. One of my invitations always is not to judge yourself or others. Don't be so hard on you. Just look at them. Because when we understand where our reactions come from, we stop fighting ourselves so much. Another common example happens in relationships. Imagine someone whose partner takes several hours to reply a message. From a subconscious or survival-based state, the mind immediately begins creating stories. They don't care about me anymore, something is wrong, they are ignoring me, they have changed, is she cheating on me or he's cheating on me? And emotionally, the person starts reacting to a story in their mind, not necessarily to reality. That is emotional autopilot. Now imagine the same situation from a more present and conscious state. It doesn't mean the thoughts will not show up, but you don't believe them as truth. The person notices the activation and says, okay, I am feeling insecure right now, but that doesn't automatically mean my thoughts are true. And suddenly, there is a space, a very small, little, tiny space. There is regulation. There is awareness. And I promise you that changes the entire experience. Because we stop reacting automatically to every thought that appears in our mind. We see this constantly in the workplace as well. For example, someone receives feedback from their manager. From autopilot and 3D consciousness, the person immediately becomes defensive. They feel attacked. They justify themselves. Internally, they interpret the feedback as I am not good enough, I failed, they don't value my work. But from a more regulated state, the person can hear the feedback without automatically feeling that their personal value is under attack. He or she just listens, and that completely changes the conversation, and of course the sensation and the feeling and the peace of mind. Because 3D consciousness reacts to protect itself. A more present consciousness observes before reacting. And honestly, this changes leadership in a powerful way. Many organizations are led by incredibly intelligent people who are emotionally exhausted because nobody taught all of this. We didn't learn when we were childs, even when we were young. Sometimes people are adults and they still don't know this. This is like very recent. And when a leader operates from constant pressure, fear, frustration, or the need to control everything, the emotional culture of the entire team begins to become dysregulated as well. Because emotions are contagious. The automatic pilot is contagious. The emotional energy of one person affects everyone around them. And this helps us understand something very important. Many times, we don't simply need new strategies. We need to learn how to step out of that emotional autopilot. The same thing happens with health. Some people spend so many years living in stress, tension, and survival mode that the body becomes used to producing the chemicals associated with those states. And over time, the body begins to live in inflammation, exhaustion, anxiety, and imbalance. By the way, if you are listening to this, there are many things that we can do to solve that in a very easy way. But it's very important first to understand all of this. That is why sometimes the body needs more than medication or external treatments. It also needs internal safety. It needs regulation. It needs emotional rest. It needs coherence. Because the body is constantly listening to the internal state from which we live our lives. And this is where a powerful aspect of higher consciousness appears. Higher consciousness is not seeking perfection. It is seeking presence. To be in the present moment. It is not trying to make sure you never feel fear, anger, or anxiety again. It simply helps you recognize more quickly when you are reacting from survival mode. Because that moment of awareness changes everything. The moment when you can catch yourself, the moment when you can pause and say, wait a minute, maybe what I am feeling is not coming only from this moment. And that is where transformation begins. Not because emotions magically disappear, they will not, but because your relationship with them changes. You begin observing before reacting. You begin breathing before exploding. You begin listening before defending yourself. You begin realizing that not every thought is true. And little by little, you start leaving behind automatic states you have been normalizing for years. And I want to share something that feels deeply important to me. Many people think healing means becoming someone who never gets triggered. But often, healing simply means becoming aware more quickly of what is happening inside you before you reacted automatically. Now you can observe yourself. Before, you exploded and didn't understand why. Now you can recognize, I am exhausted. I am overwhelmed. I am operating from fear. I am reacting from a wound. And you have all the right in the world to express it because you're human. And that completely changes your relationship with yourself because you begin meeting yourself with more awareness and less judgment. And honestly, I believe one of the most powerful abilities we can develop as human beings is the ability to observe ourselves while we are living the experience. I always say that life heals in life itself. Because that is where true inner freedom begins, in the experience. Not when we control everything outside of us, but when we stop being completely controlled by our automatic internal programs. And with that, we come to the end of today's episode. Today, we talk about emotional autopilot and how so many of our reactions are not coming only for the present moment. They come from accumulated emotions, chronic stress, repetitive thoughts, subconscious memories, and survival states that we have normalized for too long. In 3D consciousness, we were programmed without realizing it. In 5D consciousness, we become the ones who consciously choose the program, what no longer serves us, what no longer supports us, what steals our peace, and replace it with new information and new possibilities. The autopilot may never completely disappear because thoughts will continue to arise. But now we have the ability to recognize them in time and consciously decide how we want to respond. This is where our power begins. When we have power over the program instead of allowing the program to have power over us. And with that, I leave you today. The autopilot will continue to exist. Some programs were installed by others. Some were created through life experiences. And hopefully, many of them will now be consciously chosen by us. But from this moment forward, we know something important. The person who has control over that button is us. Thank you for being here. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Blessings to you all. Thank you for sharing this space with me. Take a moment today to reflect on what resonated with you, and maybe ask yourself, what would change in my life if I started seeing reality from a different level of consciousness? I am Flavia Sierra, and this is Beyond 3D. Until next time.